President Obama's his DACA action. So, you know, again, I looked at both of these orders, and I guess you can get into the minutia, but it feels like President Trump living up to what he inferred, that he was going to deal with this with heart, that he was grappling with it, but that these so-called dreamers are probably going to be allowed to stay as long as they don't join gangs and keep their noses clean.
I think that, Charles, I think that this is a brilliant move on the part of President Trump. What he's doing is gaining our trust. He's going to let these deportations begin, watch our crime decline, watch our terror threats decline, come back to the American people with those statistics, and then be ready to present the rest of his plan, however that is. And I do think that it's important that he says, hey, I'm going to have a heart in this. Trust me on this. And don't forget, too, Charles, some people will self-deport, but you cannot eat a whole elephant in one bite, and I think that's where this expert CEO is going with this. Michael,
I mean, you know, you've dealt with immigration and immigration policy for a long time. I think what Gina is saying is probably the right approach. I mean, we're dealing with lawbreakers, and of course, there's that gray area because these kids were brought here. But by the same token, if you leave that area open, then it's always going to be an excuse for a future illegal immigration, knowing that I can bring a child here or have kids in this country and not have to leave.
Every president in our nation's history has had to grapple with some form of immigration issue. The way they're addressing this will hurt the bank. They're going to do 10,000 agents, but they haven't accommodated for one more immigration judge. When it comes to dreamers, and a lot of these kids are in the military, you understand, they don't know from any other flag, they don't have an accent, but for the grace of God and their parents, they were brought here by no act on their own. The president received a huge backlash with 200 people stuck in airports over a weekend. Imagine 820,000 people. Now, I use the word imagine for a reason. My dad represented John Lennon when he took on the Nixon administration, where they discovered this deferred action, prosecutorial discretion. And it's only because the great deporter-in-chief, President Obama himself, and I say this as a Democrat, after deporting so many people, being upset at the deafening silence in Washington, stepped up to do something for these kids. Now, 820,000 people is not 200 people stuck in an airport. What's the right thing to do? Well, look, I'm all for getting rid of our hardened criminals. I'm a former federal prosecutor and a mayor, and I believe there's lots of room on airplanes to get rid of hardened criminals. But when it comes to these individuals, the president is showing heart, and I tip my hat to him for that.
Yeah, and Gina, listen, and again, it does to me seem like it will ultimately be low-hanging fruit with respect to the more complicated issues that the president is going to deal with when it comes to immigration, particularly with trying to get through new laws. But by the same token, I think the media is going to overplay their hand, and there will be some of these kids who will have gang affiliations. And there's going to be resistance to even having them leave the country. It's one thing if someone joined the Marines. It's another one if someone joined the Crips or the Bloods.
Yeah, and there are a couple of other possible trip-ups here, Charles. One is that more people will send their children over, unaccompanied, and so that could run into some dangerous things too. But I do think that what your other guest said is key. What President Trump's strategy here is to get rid of the criminals. Nobody wants the dangerous criminal minds here. Once the president has gained the trust of most of America, as he will, then the rest of the problem will be so obvious to all of us, as you just pointed out, that we will demand he do something about it. Then he's answering that call.
Interestingly, I don't mean to interrupt, but nobody with a DUI, with any kind of minimum crime, can actually get DACA relief. It's only for 16 to 30 or 31-year-olds, and it's designed for the most puritanical children who are innocent. So we have to protect those people.
All right, guys, thank you both very much. Next, can President Trump make good on this pledge to unite the country?